Right. Okay, the first thing I want to say is that the teacher's guides really are your best friend. They're very clear. They're going to walk you through what you need to do. And I know that sometimes people have these materials at their schools and they're in a little bit of a panic as to what do I do with the materials. But the first thing you want to do is get the teacher guide and look at it. Now, regardless of the level of the teacher guide, it's going to start with an introduction. And sometimes people do not realize that there are literally scripted lessons. So they get a little bogged down in the introduction and they're thinking this is a challenging thing, or I'm not sure I know how to do this. And they put the teacher guide aside. Be aware that you can page through that introductory part and look at lesson 1, and you're going to see that it's going to be very easy to teach it. I come from a background of decades of supervising teachers, and so I tend to be a little heavy sometimes in the intro.
Sandra Doran.
In explaining the philosophy of things, in let me just make sure. So just be careful. I don't mind you unmuting to call out questions, but just be careful to stay muted if you're going to have background noises, because then it does become a little distracting for people. And I understand that can happen sometimes.
They should work for this unmuted.
All right. I just may have to do something to be sure. Just 1 second. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so just the first thing, that if you're already sitting here thinking, you know, I have all these things, I don't know what to do with them, get your teacher guide, get some kind of a sticky note and put it at lesson 1 in your teacher guide so that you're very clear and aware that that's there. The way I laid out the teacher guide, there's only one level that does not have slides, and that is level 3-4A. And the reason it doesn't is because it does a lot with I have small group lessons and whole group lessons and everything in there, and it's very clear how to do it. But every teacher guide, with the exception of 3-4A, has accompanying PowerPoints. And there have been people who don't even realize that the PowerPoints are right there. So when you look at your kit and you have that little plastic box, you open up that little plastic box, and in there is a small, it's like half the size of a regular flash drive. On that flash drive is your PowerPoints. And in the case of the kindergarten through grade 2, on those PowerPoints is your stories. In K2A, they're audio stories. And then when we got to K2B and C, the stories actually have little animations that come with them. So that's my first tip to you, is it's good to read the intro so you know the philosophy, but don't get bogged down there. Just open right up. And what I did, because I personally have a very hard time following instructions, so I wanted to make it really easy. So in every lesson, when it's time for you to show a slide, I actually put a picture of a slide. So it's very clear to follow through. I mean, you really are not going to have trouble doing these lessons at all once you're clear on all the stuff that you need and that you have. The one that has the most background and stuff to have to learn about it is K2, but nevertheless, the materials come with it. So I'm gonna go through now, starting with the K2 lesson, but does anyone have a question about what materials to even use for what grade level or anything of that nature? Is it K2 or pre-K2 is the question. Okay, so what happened is when I first wrote it, I wrote it as a K2 unit. Then Arnie, bless his heart, Arnie Nielsen actually contacted me and he said, Sandy, we are a pre-K through 2 system. Don't forget that. So I went into the K2 manual and I revised it in the introduction saying, this is how you can teach this for pre-K. So, and that's the only manual that does that is pre-K through 2A. That is intended, that can be used for pre-K because then we added picture cards to the vocab cards. And in the intro, I say, for example, we teach contractions in there, and I will say, if you're doing this for pre-K, instead of teaching the contractions, you can have them draw angels like this. So there's an addendum in pre-K through 2A that tells you how to adapt it for the pre-K. The audio lessons, is there a website? The audio lessons, I have the audio stories. That's the one thing that's audio is the stories, and they're on your flash drive. The audio on your flash drive should be on your PowerPoint. On the PowerPoint, embedded in the PowerPoint, if you click again, you should get that story. Okay, if you have any trouble getting those audio stories, then let me put my email address in there. But we haven't had anybody that's had a problem when you go to the PowerPoint and you click again, you should hear those audio stories. But I'm going to put my starting right out with this. angelsforkids.com. If you have trouble, I can send them to you. And I will eventually, I'm going to start making animations for K2A. But you know that the way, do not hesitate to use these whole class. If you are a multi-grade teacher, I made these for you. I don't want this to be hard. And these are not the kind of lessons that you can say, okay, this grade, do this on your own. This grade, do this on your own. This grade, do this on your own. These are intended to be done. They're very interactive and it's very teacher and student participatory driven. So do it for the whole class. We piloted our 3rd and 4th grade unit in a 1 through 8 classroom and they all loved it. So don't separate it out. Don't make it difficult for yourself in regards to that. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and go to some slides. So I may not see your typed questions. If I'm missing them, just unmute and ask. I have no problem with that at all. Okay, let's quickly go through this. So I want to explain about the A, B, and C. What happened was I wrote the first set, and then everybody that did it liked it and begged me to do more. So that's thus
No,
A, B.
no, 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 Daisy, no, 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 te hagas pipi, ven. Good girl. No, 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 no.
Okay, then. Sounds like somebody's dog was about to pee on the rug would be my guess. But anyway, so A, if you have let's say you had a K2 classroom, you could use this like an alternation. You would teach A the first year, B the second year, C the third year. But let's say you had single grade classrooms, then you could teach A to maybe pre-KK if you had that room. Then you could teach B to grade 1 and C to grade 2. Pre-K through 2 is the only one that has an A, B, and C. But if you wanted to just teach them all the first year, have at it. But that's the thought of how you can do it. You can do it alternation or layer on it. And again, I'm not going to see your questions in the chat now, so call out if you have questions as I go along. Okay, so when you take a look at everything you should have with your lower grades kits, you have your anchor text, you have your watercolor book, you have your teacher guide book. The other thing that I wanted to stress here is when you teach this, please do not go ahead of how these things are presented. We've worked very hard to make them developmentally appropriate. Don't go beyond what's in the text. Just a second, here we go. For the lower grades, you don't tell a first grader there is going to be a judgment. Some people are going to be lost and some people are going to be saved. That is not developmentally appropriate to be teaching a young child. I do not want it on my conscience that I'm instilling fear in the hearts of young children. So we have our poster and we make it very clear as to we use broad strokes. So we don't teach young children there's going to be a judgment. We teach young children God is always fair, trust that he will do what's right. And once they understand that, that's the only basis they need. So be gentle with these young children, any age level. You will see the way that this is written is always developmentally appropriate. When we do begin to talk a little bit about Babylon falling, we talk about it as being the mixture of truth and error, and we're very matter of fact about it. But even the artwork, I told the artist at first, on the cover of something, there was people running through some woods, and I said, no, that's not what I want this to look like. I want this to be associated actually with joy, because Jesus sacrifices enough for us. And that's what I want people to come away with, not fear. So be very careful about that. Look at the wording and don't ad lib when the material doesn't call for that. Okay, so let's move on. And I'm trying to see if I can, for some reason. Okay, there we go. So here's our poster. Again, you can use this for any grade level. God's always fair. Trust that he'll do what's right. God made everything. Love, obey, and worship him. God created the world. Keep the seventh day holy to respect him. There's your first angel. Angel 2, always keep the commandments. Don't follow those who want you to do something wrong. Obey God, even when it's hard. Angel 3, use your mind to listen for God's voice. Use your hands to do what God wants you to do. Be patient, have faith, trust Jesus. That's it for the little ones. So again, your teacher guide, flip up to that lesson and you'll see exactly what it is. Here's your anchor text for K2A. Here is your flash drive that you will have in everyone. And on the flash drive for K2 is you have PowerPoint and Keynote slides. Now, K2, you have whole and small group lessons. Now, if you look at this and you think that our description of how to do literacy rotations is too hard and you don't want to do your small group lessons, don't do them. Don't let that be what prevents you from picking this up. Again, in K2A, there's a very detailed explanation of how you can do literacy rotations to reinforce the learning. We provide everything you need for these little stations after you teach the whole group lesson. You may or may not choose to use them, but don't get bogged down there because the lessons are very basic. So we have before reading. You'll see right there in lesson 1 for K2, when do angels appear in the Bible and kids talk to one another, I remember a time when I saw an angel. Then you do a picture walk, just like you do with your books in your reading series. When you do your picture walk, it's the same kind of a thing. You go through the pictures, ask them, what do they see? Then we have our vocab cards. And when we do our vocab cards, we do have our new picture cards for the pre-Kers. And I do go through because, again, of my special ed background, we introduce the pictures and we talk about syllables being word parts. And it's all right there in your manual. We talk about how vowels open your mouth, consonants close your mouth, place your hand under your chin and feel your chin drop. And you'll see it's right there. I just put it in the teacher guide how I would say it. So that's before you actually read the book, that first lesson is a little heavier than most because I'm walking you through the skills of getting the students ready for the vocabulary words that are in there. Then during the reading, again, your regular ways that you're used to doing it now with your pathways, your teacher read, your echo read, your alternate read, how we learned to do that when we very first came on to pathways. You read together, you read a phrase, then they read it, you read every other phrase with them. Okay, then after reading, now this is probably the only material you're going to have to provide yourself is the big sentence strips. So in lesson 2 of K2, we have the students retell the story in their own words, and then they mix those sentence strips up and figure out how to get them back in order and read, which is a great skill because they keep reading it over and over until they get it. So that skill is in there. Then again, your slides will have your stories on them. And all of these things that you're doing whole group, then later gets rolled over into your small group time and just put at your center. So there's no extra work at all. You're not having to do all this extra work to make your centers. Your watercolor books. I put watercolor books for K2, A, B, and C. I love watercolor. That's what I do. And you will see I have videos in there that you can use with the kids, and it shows them how to do wet on wet and wet on dry. Watercolor is a medium that you have to let the paint and the paper kind of play, and you get beautiful results. So they do their crayon resist, and then they wet the paper and apply the paint and kind of let it play, and they have these beautiful books. And the paper is all cut out for you, and then you just adhere it to the books, and the parents love these books. I was so delighted that one of our sponsors stopped by a classroom and took the pictures, and the kids are doing a marvelous job. I just think this is gorgeous work. We teach them, we show them on those PowerPoints the slides of what a landscape looks like and how to make the landscape the entire bottom of the paper, that it goes from one side to the other, and then wet that paper and paint right over the crayon, and they just had beautiful results. I just think that's amazing. Then your rotations that you can reinforce. We have read with teacher, listening stations, sentence strips, vocab cards, puppet retell. Reading with the teacher, you can use that for when you have your students reading on their own level. Bring in your own materials, because then your other kids will have something to do while you're working with your small groups. So the listening station, they can just re-listen to the stories that we've had during the whole group. The sentence strips, again, they can mix up those strips and pretend one is the teacher, and in small groups, they're reading that over again. Their vocab cards, they can continue with activities with those. And then the puppets. Now, you get these puppets on cardstock. You can cut them out and attach them to a popsicle stick, and they use them to retell the story, or you can import them into Puppet Pals. Puppet Pals is an amazing little app that I happen to love. I've used it for decades now. And you can import any characters into it, and then the students move it around on the screen with their finger and record their voice and then watch their puppet show. I'll show you a second of that.
Three angels in the sky.
So see how they,
The first angel said,
okay, so they can move the puppets right around. So that's K2A. K2B is not geared to pre-K. The only one geared to pre-K is that first one. So you use it after pre-K through 2A or in the next highest grade level. So if you're using pre-K through 2A for kindergarten, then you're going to use K2B for first grade. You can use it for K1, K2, 1 and 2, 1, 2. Again, you got your teacher's guide, you got your slides, all the same stuff is in there. The only thing is, in these stories, I went ahead and made animations out of them. I had Yvette wrote down some stories, and then I recorded her telling the stories, and then I made these into animations. So they're a lot of fun. In fact, this one, the Banty, surprised us and got 27,000 views when we put it on YouTube. So I guess people like the animated ones. So there's your text. Again, your vocab cards, again, your watercolor books. Now you got a bonus unit here. I love, this is my favorite of all time units, but when you're doing K2C, this introduces the continents. So if you're doing a 3-year alternation, this is your 3rd year out, or you're doing this for your 2nd graders, this book not only teaches the continents, but, and this is geared a little more towards 1st and 2nd graders because it's integrating that social studies in there. We have QR code. You can scan the QR code on the front inside cover here, and that QR code will then, you'll see the web address on your phone, and just click on that, and you'll see the page that looks like the page of the book, and you just press the forward arrow, and you will have that verse that I wrote. You will hear it as a song, and our artist is also an exquisite musician, and so for each country, he changed up the background instruments to match that. So if it's Jamaica, it's going to kind of sound like Jamaica, Australia, etc. It is, I think I'm the most proud of that of any book. So be sure that you get a chance to do this one. Okay, again, your vocab cards, again, your watercolor books, but this one also, you have continent and country maps in there. So we like to integrate. When you teach this, look, it's only a 2-week unit. Combine. For this, you can combine your social studies, your Bible time, and your language arts time and teach it as an integrated unit. We do these things to give you a break. So when you're teaching the other ones, teach them during your reading and Bible time as an integrated unit, and you will make your life a lot easier, and you're not trying to squeeze stuff in. So whenever you can, that's your only survival, as church school teachers, teach it to all the grades together. Don't be trying to chop it up and running around and making yourself nervous. Teach it to all the grades that you can, or at least 1 through 4 together, and combine it and integrate it with the other grade levels. So that's the K2. We're going to go on to 3-4A, and I would like to know your questions, thoughts so far on K2. Anybody, somebody please unmute and let me know how this is coming along. I need to know somebody's out there. Any K2 person? Mhm.
Oh, I'm not a K2. I'm 3 to 5, so I'll yield.
Okay, all right, but at least you made some noise, so I knew somebody was out there. I appreciate that, Tricia. Okay, somebody else, K2, your thoughts.
I'm PreK, and I wanted to know when should I start teaching this? Because school we've only started. We've only been in school for a week, started as of tomorrow. So when should I start this Three Angels messages?
Yeah, great question. Some people do like to do it at the beginning of the year while they're doing their assessments, because all the materials come with it and you don't have to run around finding stuff. But it is totally up to you when you want to initiate it. If you do the K2 one at the beginning of the year, it can be helpful because you are learning. There are some good things in the intro of how to set up your small groups and whatnot. So it can be a way to get your kids organized and up and functioning if you feel comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments, K2? Okay, ready to move on?
Hello,
All right.
hello, Sandra.
Yes,
Hello. Yes.
yes.
Just one question. Is there any link for the watercolor instruction that you have done?
The watercolor instruction, well, on the flash drive, there is actually a video of me working with kids doing the watercolor and explaining how to do it.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, it shows them how you can do a wet on wet and a wet on dry of me working with kids at my house. I did put that on the flash drive. Okay, and there's different kinds of watercolor. You have pan paints, which are those dried ones. You have tube paint, and you actually can have liquid paint. But the most common for the little kids usually is the pan paints. But sometimes I'll even use a tube paint, and then you just add a lot of water to it, depending on what quality you want to get for them. Okay, so let's take a look at 3-4, unless anybody has anything else. So
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So this is basically a 2-week lesson and you just teach it back to back, and does it matter? Like you were saying, probably at the beginning of the year is probably a good way to begin. So maybe the first 2 weeks of school,
Yeah.
and then come back to it or just review it during the year would probably be the best idea.
Yeah, you can, and it may take you more than 2 weeks.
Okay.
It just depends on your particular class.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but it's kind of nice to start out with because honestly, everything's there. I mean, I can't give you the big chart and the sentence strips, but other than that, everything's there, so just kind of makes your life easy. Okay, so grades 3 and 4, ready for that?
One last
oh,
question. Sorry.
no,
just keep
no.
so we are saying 2 weeks or a little bit more. Are we talking about the whole day instruction?
No, 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 not at
How
all.
many hours?
No, this is like, I would say each class period for this grade level is 40 minutes or something. No, it's not the whole day.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
It would be like just teaching a Bible class, for example.
right, right.
Yeah.
Like, but
For
for
2 weeks, you're
K2,
teaching a Bible. Yes, exactly.
it's Bible and reading integrated.
Mhm.
Yeah, Bible and reading integrated. So that gives you time, if it's taking you more time with the painting and stuff like that. If you take a little over an hour or something like that, it's your reading instruction too. Yeah. Okay, good. This is great. I'm so happy people are asking questions. I like that. Okay, so for grades 3 and 4, this one it doesn't have slides that come with it. It's the only one that doesn't. But there is plenty of work to do here. So you'll be good. Now, this is the only one that you really need to know if your students, what their reading level is, which is not to be confused with their grade level. Because I wrote the book on 3 different reading levels. When we offered this at teacher convention, it was so many people and we knew that everybody was going to be ordering. We just brought the blue level. But the book, Beth and the Trio of Angels, is written on a 3rd and 4th grade level, which is the blue level, on a 2nd grade level, which is the yellow level, and on a 5th and 6th grade level, which is the green level. The reason I did that was because I know you are multi-grade teachers. I don't want kids having to read a different book to be part of the same discussion. This was actually before there was much out about AI, or at least that I knew about it. So I literally would write a chapter, test it, put it into a system that tells you what level you're writing at. And then I would adjust it chapter by chapter. I would rewrite it to a lower reading level. And I rewrote every single chapter by hand to a higher reading level. So you're welcome. So that's why as a multi-grade teacher, you can so easily do this one. And for this one, in the teacher guide, I give you a whole group lesson that everybody starts together. And then you have your small group lessons for each group. And again, it's integrated with your literacy. So you're going to have plot, character, and setting in here. You're going to have dialogue, flashback. All of these skills are also taught. I did this because I know how busy Adventist teachers are, and you need to have a lot of bang for your buck. So, and people, the schools that do this one are so excited. I have one school, and whenever they found out I did a sequel, they were over the moon. And I'm now working on a 3rd in the series of books, and I read those chapters to that one classroom, and they're very excited and giving me input. But if you take a look at the teacher guide, it's all laid out in there. You have the whole group lesson for about 20 minutes. I tell you what to do, place your students in mixed ability groupings and have them share a prediction. Then this is the literacy element we're teaching that particular day. Plot diagram, you teach it together. Then we introduce the second half of the 3rd angel's message. Then you go into your small groups. Now, your small groups for this grades 3 and 4, here's how your schedule can look. From 8:40 to 9, for example, 20-minute, your whole group lesson, it's written right out for you. Then for 20 minutes, you take your yellow group, the ones that are reading on the lower reading level, and you start them out. Their small group lesson is right in your teacher guide. Your other two groups are reading independently because they're on a reading level that they can read, so they're reading at their desks. Then you send your yellow group back. They can read independently. You got them started out at your table, going through their vocabulary. Your blue group, which is your middle group, can come up and read with you. Your green goes to literacy circles. We give you the tool for the literacy circles, which I will show you. Then yellow eventually goes to their literacy circles, blue goes to their literacy circles, and green comes up and reads with you. You don't have work to create here. Your small and whole group lessons are given to you. So this grades 3 and 4, I'm telling you what, this is a gift because you pick it up and you can do that with a small school, whole school, and you're good to go. We give you these cards that have the slow motion and action strategies. We show you how you teach this to the kids, that when you're reading, sometimes you have to stop because you can't sound out a word, or you don't know the meaning of a word, or you get bogged down in understanding the passage. So before you actually launch the book, you teach them how to use this card. There is a video on the flash drive that you can play for the kids, or you can watch it yourself and then teach the kids how to use it. The other side of the card has the action strategies, you know, what's happening automatically. You're connecting to a character, you're predicting, you're feeling. And the students just take these little dotted line boxes, and you just put a little sticky note in there with that number on it to set up the card. And when you use that strategy, you just stick the sticky note with that number on it right to that part of the page of the book when you use the strategy. So then when it's time for your literacy group or to read with the teacher, the literacy leader can just say, I see you have a 2 on this page. And can you tell me what happened? What was the word that you didn't understand? What strategy did you use? So it gives you a tool. And again, if you do this at the beginning of the year, you can use that card for the rest of the year with any book that you want to use it. And again, we're not, we are a service organization. We're not worried about making money. We're not about proprietary needs. If you want to copy this card and use this card for anything you want, that is totally fine with us. I know I went through that quickly, but I just want to give you the overview. Questions about this so far, grade 3 and 4? Everybody okay so far? Okay. Moving along, 3-4B is a sequel. So if you have a standalone 3rd grade and a standalone 4th grade, you use Jasmine the next year. If you're a multi-grade, you can do an alternation. I did not write Jasmine on 3 reading levels. I was getting a little tired. I'm sorry. So Jasmine is on 1 reading level. It's more of a whole class read, and we have a, it's the sequel. And we have a student participation booklet with some graphic organizers for them to follow, for them to do. But again, easy to do that as a whole class. Okay, so again, teacher's guide, getting on to grades 5 and 6 now. Do we still have some of our upper grades people? Nobody gave up on me yet, plowing through the lower grade stuff?
Yes, we're here. I was trying to do a screenshot, so
Okay.
I couldn't unmute.
You want me to go back and give you anything for a screenshot? Did you get everything you needed, Trisha?
Well, it's Tricia, but yes, I'm good.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to move on to kind of the middle upper grades here. So in the Southern Union, we have a test called the RAP test that we like to do. I actually initiated it decades ago when I first came to the Southern Union, because when I was in Connecticut, I was part of grading the Connecticut assessment writing mastery tests. And I felt like as a system that we were just doing the ITBS, it just had these snippets, you know, of information in it. But we weren't assessing whether students could write. So I brought that into Florida, and eventually brought it into the Southern Union, and it has spread to a number of the other unions. So when you do a stimulus-based writing assessment, you give the student 2 pieces of writing, and then you give them a critical thinking question where they have to apply the knowledge in those 2 sources. And because you, the teacher, have the exact sources they have, you know if they're able to use the information correctly to summarize and cite, because you have the same information. Well, I decided that I would write the 5th and 6th grade series in the same way. And we're finding that teachers that do this right before the RAP test is administered are finding that their student scores are going up on the RAP test. So again, I try to give you that extra bang for your buck. So the grades 5 through 6 curriculum is a writing curriculum, as well as obviously teaching the 3 angels messages. So there are 10 booklets. Think of those booklets in pairs. The first 2, Lost in the Jungle and Off to China, go together. And at first, we give students a lot of support and scaffolding in learning to write, and at the end, they write on their own. But in the first 2 booklets, there is actually a template that it's in your teacher's guide that you will photocopy and give to the students, and you're teaching them how to use booklets to summarize, how to use sources. It's not about the hierarchy of, what's the word? It's not about the, you know, technical AP style annotation. You know, they're just writing in parentheses which source they got it from. The point being, how do you correctly summarize, paraphrase, direct quote, and put information together in a new way to support your view on something? So the first 2 have to do with gospel to the whole world, and they are about a very young missionary and a very old missionary. And what does it take to be a missionary? So what happens, and some people have gotten a little confused on this, you introduce both of the booklets on the first day, and you introduce the prompt, but you're only reading the first booklet. Then on the second day, you read the second booklet, and then you answer the prompt. Then the next 2 days, you're going to be introducing booklets 3 and 4. And then you're going to be reading booklet 3, then the next day reading booklet 4 and answering the prompt. The first day you're doing it with your teacher. The second day you're doing it, the second 2 days, you're doing it in a small group. You're eventually doing it in pairs. You eventually do it by yourself. And at the end, before they have to do this to be assessed on their own, I actually give a sample of where I provide in the teacher's guide and as a handout 2 other stories, and I have a written response to it to show as a model what it looks like when you respond to any 2 stories and a question. So they have a sample to look at, they have a rubric. So that was 5 and 6A. And just inside every one of these booklets, again, I wrote the same story on 3 reading levels. And because you're getting into junior high kids, maybe a kid doesn't want to say, oh, my book looks slightly different than yours. So inside every booklet are 3 reading levels. So if someone is having a hard time flipping to the middle one, which is the green level, they can just go to the very beginning of the book and read it on a 3rd and 4th grade level. If someone feels like they want a challenge, or if you have a 5 through 8 room and one of the parents is saying, well, my kid is an 8th grader and why are they reading the same thing? That kid can read it on the higher reading level. So every story inside each booklet you'll find those reading levels. It will say blue versus being the color because we didn't run the color on the inside because it would make it too expensive for everybody. But they're all nonfiction passages. They're all true. They're all things that I experienced or interviewed people. So for example, here you have icy escape and out of the fire. Babylon has fallen, that great city, because she seduced the nations of the world and made them share the wine of her intense impurity and sin. And then the question becomes, read the two passages and write an essay about the importance of paying attention to signs and taking timely action when danger approaches. How does this tie into the second angel's message? So they will have information that you're presenting to them via the slides, information about how to write and about the three angels' messages, and then they bring that together. Some people seem to have gotten hung up on the word passages. I have had people ask me, what do you mean by passages? All I mean is the two booklets. You know, each time they're going to have two booklets introduced. They get the prompt for both of them at the get-go. Both of them are introduced. They read the first booklet. The next day they read the second booklet. They do the writing. The feedback on this is pretty consistent. Kids love, love, love the stories. Kids hate, hate, hate to write, which is kind of a sad thing. Maybe that means they need that part, but that's the feedback we get. The writing is like pulling teeth for kids.
No lo requieren, so no le va a venir.
Okay, any questions so far on this? All right. And these are all the things you're going to be teaching them. Developing an opening paragraph, writing evidence sections, putting in your direct quotes, your information summaries, your conclusion. Okay, does someone have a question? Yeah, you're muted, Elizabeth, if you have do you have a question or no? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were raising your hand. Okay, so that's that. 5-6B. Again, the next year you can pick it up. You have a whole new, fresh set of stories. Amazing stories, amazing stories. Home Alone is the story of Norris and Sube. I don't know if any of you know Norris and Sube. He was a wonderful teacher. We had him here in Florida, and he told me this story about how, as a boy, he got in the middle of, wartime, how he and his family got separated, and he and his siblings had to survive on their own. And, Norris left us here in Florida. He was teaching in Indiana, and he was going to the school where he had become the president. The principal. He had his two twins with him and one of their cousins, and somebody hit him and killed Norris and one of his children and the cousin. Just a sad thing. And I felt like it was sort of honoring him by getting his story out there. So that's the story of, one of your colleagues that at least got preserved. Okay, we're going to go on to grades 7 and 8 and then go on to high school. Questions about 5 and 6? Everybody's okay so far?
Yes, we're okay so far.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. All right, 7 and 8. 7 and 8 is when the sponsor said, Sandy, you got to give them the whole three angels messages in grades 7 and 8. This is where it happens. So 7 and 8, it's again, it's clear, it's matter of fact. What we teach is that whenever you mix truth with error, that's Babylon falling. The whole thing that happened, if you look at historical Babylon, that's the easiest way to understand it. What happened with historical Babylon was Nebuchadnezzar took truth. I mean, the statue, the head of gold was Babylon, but then he mixed the error with the truth, and that's when everything went south. And so what we teach students is when you take a little bit of truth and mix in error, that's Babylon falling. And at the end of our days on this earth, politics, religion, everything will get mixed up to the point that error and truth will get mixed together. And you do not want to just follow the crowd blindly. You need to know your Bible. And, I got news for everybody. There's no good political side. It's not like, you know, and we have no business actually trying to politicize our views to children. We have no business doing that. But there's no good side, because in the end, as Adventists, we know that we're standing on God's word, and that's it. You know, we're not part of a larger group that is viewing things the way we view it. I mean, of course, God has people, you know, and all over the place. I'm not meaning to imply that he doesn't, but there's no side in our society that is pure. There's error mixed in all over the place, every side, whatever view anybody's on. So the point being, we need to learn to stand up for ourselves and our Bibles, and know our Bibles. All right, so grade 7 and 8, you get an interactive notebook. And that's another good thing of starting out with this, because then you can always have kids do interactive notebooks throughout the year. You know that if you, as a 7th and 8th grade teacher, just stand up there like a sage on the stage and, you know, expect to just lecture, that you're the only one whose brain is lighting up. So with interactive notebooks, on the left side, the students are recording facts, but on the right side, they are responding to how they feel about that, what they think. And brain research shows us that if we want somebody to recall something, they need to engage both their left and right brains. So that is why we set up this interactive notebook. By the way, if you look closely at it, it was designed by an Adventist doodler. We paid a doodler. So if you have a doodler in your classroom, or if you are a doodler, please know that that may not be the worst thing in the world, because someone was paid for doodling. And you can see it right on the front of that notebook and on the pages. Now this, in 7th and 8th, this integrates history. And I actually looked, I mean, you can look at any history book, and I wanted to get the facts straight from history and straight from the Bible, so that anybody that goes to one of our church schools, I don't want them saying it was only in their own religious books. So I did not take the material from Ellen White. I took it. It was amazing to me that I could literally look through the pages just of a history book and get the information in regards to the change of the Sabbath, and everything that I needed to know was right there. So this one is good to teach with history. It has the full description of the 3 angels' messages. It has the interactive notebooks. So for example, you'll see our Adventist doodler here on the back of the page. So on the left page, you're instructing them, okay, they're writing in this little graphic organizer what the first angel's message is. But on the right page, they're saying they can respond to any of these things they want. I think, I feel, I wonder, I hope, I know, I don't know, so that they're making it their own. All right, there are a couple of student projects. The first one is a little more traditional of a project, and the second one is totally open-ended, project-based. So the first student project is they take a period of history. They do this as a group. So let's say they're going to take World War II. They pick a leader who mixed religion and government in a persecuting way. So let's say they pick Hitler. They pick an event. Let's say they pick Kristallnacht, the night of the breaking glass. They divide that out into 10 different scenes or parts. Then we give them a choice. They can draw it out like a cartoon in 10 different parts, or they can use an app such as Storyboard that, again, 10 different parts, or they can act it out as a little play with 10 different scenes. When they go to do their presentation, here is their rubric, which is right in the back of their interactive notebook. You'll notice that the play has a few different rubric points. You'll see the star at the very bottom on the left there. If an illustrated history is performed as a play, substitute rubric elements on page 15 where there's a star, because those are a little different. But in addition, before they give their 10-part cartoon or their 10-part storyboard. They give some background. So for example, if I did 10 different things that talked about Kristallnacht, the breaking of the glass, before I do that, I give my fellow students at least 8 key points, and I say, this happened during World War II. This was 1942. This was, and I have pages in there where kids can take notes so they have a background on it. So that's another part of this project that they do together. They give some background key points. Then they do a reflections journal where they, as they're thinking about these things, they reflect on it. And then their graphics, etc. But it's pretty clear in the teacher guide. And if you have questions, you can always email me. Now, the project-based learning, this is for people that really want to dive in and allow for student voice and choice. When you do project-based learning, if you're on a higher level of it, you actually start with your class and you say, okay, we have new information here. We've learned a lot of things. We've learned about the judgment. Maybe some of you learned you don't have to be afraid anymore. We've learned about, how Jesus' sacrifice is enough. Now, who do you think really can benefit? Who could we help with our new information? And you draw a series of concentric circles on the board. You start with your home and family. You widen out to your school and neighborhood, to your city, your state, your country, your world. Who do you want to benefit by your project? And kids may say, I want to benefit the kids in the 1st and 2nd grade. I think they're scared of the judgment. Okay, so I want to do something. I want to write a little children's book so they won't be scared. Somebody else might say, I want to do a podcast. I want to impact the whole world. I want to put it on our website and see how far we can get it out there. So you decide on your audience. Now, your rubric is totally different. You are not grading them on the product so much as the process. So first of all, before they embark as a group, they write a rationale. This is the people we selected. This is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. So before they embark, they're getting a grade on their rationale and describing their project. Here's what we're going to do. Then their research does not only have to be something that they're looking up. Their research might be talking to their local pastor. Their research might be discovering that this church hasn't done an evangelistic series in the last 15 years. That's part of research. Then they actually conduct the project, and then they write a journal reflecting on how it went and a conclusion as to what happens next. So nowhere in their assessment is the project itself being assessed so much as their reasons for selecting it, their description of it, their background research, their journaling of how they feel it went, and where they need to go from there. So it's a very different way of assessing, and it's a good way for you to learn how to start doing project-based learning. And I put a whole sample project in the interactive notebook so they can see that. If you're a high school teacher, you also might want to get that interactive notebook so you have that sample of how to do a good rubric and how to do a good project, because I have a sample project in there. Sample assignment, audience. This project is designed for the internet audience, all those who visit our school website are the end users. Rationale, as Christians who believe in a literal 5-day creation week, it's important for us to share these exciting developments in science. Research, we talked to our principal. We found out the website was designed 5 years ago. Description, we're going to create this series of podcasts. So it's authentic. It's stuff that matters. We're not playing school. We're actually doing something that will impact the world. So that's in there. 7 and 8B, moving right along to 7 and 8B. That is based on the story of my dad's life, which I actually wrote many years ago. It was originally called Finally Free. My dad has no idea where he came from. You know, my maiden name is Finley, but that's really nothing biological for us. Who my dad thought was his mom for all of his life, and at the end of his life, he wasn't even sure about that. But she married an old tugboat captain who was 20 years older than she was, and his name was David Finley, which is where we got the name. But anyway, this is the story of how my dad found Christ. He actually went to 17 schools in 11 years, dropped out of high school and joined the Navy, lied about his age when he was 17 and was plunged into World War II. So this is very integrated with a lot of history, but the Three Angels messages come out in the story of how he learned the truth and stood up for his faith under some very adverse circumstances. So we coordinate the Great Depression in here. We coordinate World War II. My dad was actually on one of the aircraft carriers when they did the testing of the atomic bomb in the Bikini Islands. I actually have a large picture of the atomic bomb explosion. It's kind of a strange thing. Like, are you going to hang that in your house? No, but it's a very unique because they're actually on the boat that did the photographing of it. So that's why we have the pictures. But anyway, so that is all in there. I have an old video of Mark actually interviewing Dad in New York City and some of the places that he lived. All right, so that's 7th and 8th. Now we're going to get in secondary. Questions up to now about anything elementary?
You mentioned in the material, we believe in a 5-day creation week.
Oh, no, that's an error. Thank you. And
Okay.
boy, yeah, wouldn't that be a terrible thing if I was promoting that? I need to write that down because there's two things in there that bug me too, was that the word sources is incorrectly hyphenated. And that's both of those two things are from an old corrected slide, but I absolutely am not trying to promote that. I'm going to change that slide, but that's a great find. And, you know, it continues to restore my faith in our church school teachers that you're not letting anything pass. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Same thing on.
Other thoughts, questions, comments about elementary? I know I'm going quickly here. Everybody's okay so far? Okay. Any secondary people still hanging out with us here, I'm hoping? All right. I'm going to go on to. Okay, good. So we have 4 micro units with 10 lessons in a project and 1 semester-long course that leads to student evangelism. So on the high school level, I do not start over from the beginning on the Three Angels messages. Eventually, when this has been in the system long enough, by the time the high school teachers get students, they will know them, especially if they have been through the 7th and 8th grade. So I do some deep dives, which I will show you. So when do you teach what for the micro units? The first angel is called to identity. So my thought is that if you look at the judgment, and you fully understand that Jesus is the one being judged, you will stop marginalizing other people and looking at them in a less than way. And you will stop carrying this horrible guilt burden on yourself. And you'll realize that his grace is enough. So the first angel, the first part of the first angel's message, fear God and give him glory for the hour of his judgment has come, is actually a unit on identity. And the 9th grade encounter also deals with self-esteem and identity. So when you get to that part of 9th grade encounter, you can easily foray over into this. The second half of the first angel's message, worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the seas, and the springs of water, is a call to worship. And there's 2 parts of this. One is biology and one is history. So the first half of that unit deals with just the biology of creation is amazing when you start to look at it. And then it also deals, the second half of that unit deals with Roman history and the change of the Sabbath that took place through the centuries. It was not one thing of, Constantine moving the capital. So that ties in very nicely with biology class. And it's beautiful when a science teacher can team teach that first half, or a history teacher can team teach the second half. The second angel's call to action. Babylon has fallen, has fallen. That is actually a wonderful match for government. What I did is I found current court cases that have to do with religion, and we talk about them. Should a Muslim be allowed to grow a beard in jail? That's a religious issue. As a Muslim, part of their faith is for men to have beards, but yet we don't allow people to have beards in jail. So should a Muslim be allowed to have a beard in jail? Actual court cases that have to do with religious issues we talk about and look at very carefully, and they do a case study themselves at the end. The third angel's call to action is a very good match for senior Bible when you talk about ethics. Because if you cannot, now let's say a kid in your school is being bullied and you can't stand up and help that kid, yet you think that you're going to stand up for something bigger later. So there's a lot on social and ethical and moral issues in that unit. So first angel's called to identity, ties into the encounter theme of identity in grade 9. When you fully understand the role of Christ in the judgment, you'll stop judging others and yourself. Our identity is found in Christ. They actually do research. The first time your school does this, they collect data. You save the data. The following years, students have access to the data and they do something with it. It's authentic. Again, it's not playing school. So we have the research question the first time you do it. What feelings do people have about the judgment? And we actually teach them the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. Quantitative research, they choose a large group of participants. They ask closed-ended questions. They crunch some numerical data, and that's where they get their information that then gets saved by the school. Qualitative research, they pick a small group and they probe with open-ended questions, and they go a lot deeper in a more personal way, and they collect narrative data. That is what I did for my dissertation, which is why it was 451 pages long. But I worked with a small group of families, and I actually did my dissertation on, and this was well before people even thought ADHD was real, but I did it on young adults who had lived their whole life with a very demanding sibling with ADHD and how it impacted their experience. And I talked to them, I talked to their families. So that's qualitative research. And then you look for threads and themes. So we teach them, we actually teach them how to do these kinds of data. We'll then collect those kinds of data. Then the following year in track 2, we post the results of these other classes, and we start again saying, who seems to have a need here? We know now how people feel about the judgment in these different populations. Now, what do you want to do about it? And then we teach them, how can you best deliver your message? Do you want to make posters and put them up around your school? Are you going to have a podcast? What is it that you're going to do? Are you going to have a meeting for the community? Now that you have the results of this data, it matters, because there's a very real audience that needs a very real message. So that's the first angel's call to identity. First angel's call to worship. We tie in creationism, we tie in history. We look at the intricacies of God's universe. It's a lot of fun. I tend to really enjoy biology. I majored in it for a while. And we look at how it's all connected. Meaning the first angel's message, the fourth commandment, God is the creator, and worship are all connected. All right. And then the gradual change of the Sabbath, not just an incident, but a centuries-long change. Then they do some authentic presentations to groups of their choice. Second Angel's Call to Liberty, again, government class. They study these actual cases. Third Angel's Call ties into Bible standards on ethics. The driving question, if you can't stand up for what's right now, how will you be courageous when things get hard later? 3 Cosmic is the only one that is a full semester course, and that is because it is divided between preparing for evangelism and conducting evangelism. They read Earth's Final Conflict, and what I did is I watched all of Mark's videos and looked for threads and themes as what is he doing that's effective with an audience. This is actually like teaching a speech class. I've been told that this would be actually college level speech class because they learn how to be an Adventist evangelistic preacher. And I did bring in other evangelists as well so that there is a mix of diverse styles. But they study the content and techniques of preaching. They practice their presentation. They provide feedback to their classmates. They prepare for evangelism, and they conduct 13 sessions. And we have had some schools that have done this. So, for example, you watch a little video clip. Okay, you validate the felt needs of your audience. You offer them hope. And here are 2 girls that at Ozark Academy, they started by presenting to their student body. And you see the one shorter girl, she had never presented in her life. She was very nervous. She didn't know if she could do it. And she told me it changed her life, that she decided that she was going to step up and do it, and became very confident and made a difference in other people's lives. So there we go. That is the, wow, drinking out of the fire hose method. Now, what can I help you with? Answer. How can I help you get this launched? Questions?
This would have been
comments?
so helpful. This has been so helpful last spring when we got an offer for grants to buy materials, and I tried to connect with people and try to find out what I should be getting, and pretty much ended up having to guess, and got in my order at the last minute. So I have to go through it now and see what do I have, what do I need to add, because I'm not sure I got flash drives with the material I got or not. So I'll have to go through it. And now that I understand at least the order of things and how it's to be used, this is great.
Yeah, if you got the teacher kit, then those flash drives are in there in the little plastic boxes. Let me just see if I have a plastic box in here to show you. Oh, here we go. So you should have a little box like this, and you open up the box and there's the flash drive. That's in every teacher kit.
Okay. As
Okay,
I said,
and
I haven't opened the boxes except to take out a couple and look at them.
Yeah, I think people were nervous about it. You know, I'm sorry that you had a hard experience. Just know that you can always, if you lose track of my info, just go on to the 3 Angels for Kids website and fill out a contact form. And, you know, I can always help you out because I'm doing this full time, so I don't have a problem. I'm on salary, so it's not a problem. Okay, anybody else? Let's see, this says 3 new messages, but I don't see 3 new messages below here. Oh, let's see. Can we exit if we teach 2 through 4? Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I got those answered. Okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Hopefully this recorded. Yes, it did record. So I will post this on our YouTube channel, and you can always go back to it as well. Okay.
Sandy, thank you so much. This is Kim Thompson from Georgia
Hey.
Cumberland. It is a fire hose, but everybody who's using it is just loving it.
good.
And it's the word of mouth that, oh, you don't have that yet, you need to do that. I think it's really helpful, and I'm just so many other reading and writing and all the things you put in there. So I appreciate it very much. And if there's any way that you could send a link out with your next email where your YouTube channel and all of that is, that might be helpful too. So thank you.
Yeah, and I will, let me just take you over there real quick, anybody that's still on here. Yeah, at the Pathfinder Camporee, we finally got our numbers up a little bit. Our booth was flooded. I tell you, I came back from that Pathfinder Camporee with a gift that I didn't really want, being the flu, but anyway, let me just show people real quickly. Yeah, so here is our YouTube channel. So you go to 3 Angels for Kids. Now, what might pop up is we did a series on 3ABN. We are not the same as 3ABN, but we did a series on 3ABN. And sometimes when you put 3 Angels for Kids into YouTube, that pops up. You want to see this blue circle with the flame in it. And when you see that, you know you're on the right track. When you, excuse me, when you go on here and you see the playlists, we have Week of Prayer Series 2. Then for Christian leaders and other adults, I have some devotionals. We have our songs. We have our testimonials. We have some stuff for students where we have a lot of different videos in there. Another Week of Prayer on here. The drawing videos, those are some that are actually parts of some different things I think that we did with 3ABN, some devotionals, some things for teachers, which is where I will put this training, all the stuff for the Pathfinder Honor that we just came up with. So you will find some various things on here that kids will like too. But yeah, I will send around also in our website and everything as well.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Let me make a note of that. Send YouTube and web links. All right, and most of you probably, you got the newsletter, maybe you're on our newsletter list, or because you just ordered, we had your recent orders and your names. But if you're not on our contact list, just go over to our website and make sure that you fill out a form there, which I'll show you that too. Let me just do another quick share, and here we go. So if you're not on our newsletter list, just go over to 3 Angels for Kids. You can do .com, .org, it doesn't matter. And then when you go to the bottom, you'll see that you can subscribe for our emails. And ordering our curriculum is a lot easier. You don't have to go to Advent Source. It's right here under our curriculum tab. All right, I think I got to let some people go to bed. Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, don't hesitate to get in touch if you need anything. Bye-bye.
Thank you.